Well, good evening, everyone. It's a very fine evening. We've been hosting this series for a really long time and enjoying doing that as it's ongoing. Tonight, we have two fabulous I'd like to start out with a few comments or quotes. To begin with,
It's okay.
I'd like to mention that we lost Helen Wendler at 90 years old on April 23rd. And you can go visit her at Mount Auburn Cemetery on Harvard Hill if you'd like. Also, the Irish poet Brendan Kennelly says, poetry is, above all, a singing art of natural and magical connection, because though it is born out of one person's solitude, it has the ability to reach out and touch in a humane and warmly illuminating way the solitude, even the loneliness of others. That is why, to me, poetry is one of the most vital treasures that humanity possesses. It is a bridge between separated souls. Also, the writer Dorothy Allison says, people want biography.
Let's set the table.
People want memoir. They want you to tell them that the story you're telling them is true. The thing I'm telling you is true, but it didn't always happen to me. And lastly, from Gregory Orr, who writes, I think when I read a poem that deeply moves me, that feels beautiful and moving, I feel as though I've been given more courage to live. Well, our first reader is Robbie Gamble, who received an MFA in poetry from Lesley University. His poems and essays have appeared in Post Road, Pangaris, Salamander, The Sun, Tahoma Literary Review, and the Worcester Review. His chapbook, A Can of Pinto Beans, published by Lilly Poetry Review Press, was a finalist for the 2022 Jean Patrick Award. Robbie was the winner of the 2017 Carve Poetry Prize, and he was the 2019 Robert Taylor Fellow at the Kenyon Summer Writers Workshop. His essay, Exit Wound, was cited as a notable essay in Best American Essays 2020. Robbie is the poetry editor of Solstice, a magazine of diverse voices, and he divides his time between Boston and Vermont. Please welcome Robbie.
Thank you so much, Richard. It's so exciting to be back with the PoemWorks series. I'm really excited to be reading alongside Sarah and all of the open mic people. This is a great tradition, and it's really exciting to be a part of it. So I thought I'd start out with a couple of spring poems because it's springy. Actually, up in Vermont, it's really the leaves are just beginning to peep out. So I'm very much thinking about the change of seasons. And I have a couple of poems. One's brand new and one that's a couple of years old. I'll start with a brand new one. It's called Etymology, which of course is the study of words and how they evolve. Etymology. I have come to believe that the colorful modifiers lugubrious and fecund were swapped out at birth, because tonight the spring peepers are joyous in their chorus, and their exuberant lovemaking sounds both polyphonic and slippery, which could only be described as lugubrious, while fecund is a word I would want to utter when the calendar flips to November and the water heater conks out and my favorite aunt dies unexpectedly and the prospects for an impending election seem abysmal. And this next poem, this is very much a Vermont poem. It's as much as I'll ever channel Robert Frost, I think, or at least it starts out Frostian and it kind of veers towards Melville near the end, which is interesting because both writers did a lot of their work within about a 50-mile radius of where we are in Brattleboro. So there's some vibe that I'm channeling there. Um, Vermont, I mean, the hills of Vermont, they really feel kind of oceanic, except that they're green. Um, and I see a lot of the old barns that sort of dot the hillsides seem kind of whale-like at times. So I think that was the inspiration for this piece. It's called Leviathan. A neighbor is pulling down his barn, and at the point where the road I hadn't walked since snowmelt gravels over the crest, I have a hawk's eye view into the deconstruction below. The oxide red stained siding flayed back to expose timbered bones and gabled stories of structure. A stolid box core, then the haphazard geometries of addition, sheds and chutes and cellar bulkheads tacked on over decades as dairy prices rose and fell on tidal surges of the economy. It's a snapshot moment on a plaintive spring morning where the air is earthy and fecund with pollen, and far hills beyond the pastures brush a faint wash of hopeful pastel against their forested slopes, billions of buds swelling through cautionary sheaths. A crew of five is reclaiming weathered a crew of five is reclaiming weathered lengths of intact lumber, sorting clapboards and joists into neat piles on the concrete calf pen floor. And as I stand at the verge and attune to the rhythms of sledge and saw and clank and surrender, it dawns on me. This is writing made physical, the same determined work of demolition you must bring to the weathered narrative storehouse you have pegged and stanchioned together over the years, stocked with festering provisions and implements gathering rust. You wanted to expose the bare foundation of yourself again, curl up into its sunken form, and now you must redevise an engineering plan to assemble scaffolding, plot the courses of termite and rot, sort good wood from bad, sweep splinters and detritus clear down to the floor. To work apart an old barn is Leviathan in scale, the creak and swell and pitch of it underfoot, the stenches, the greasy rituals of flensing, of rendering, the latitudes you must navigate to return to port, leaving a tatter of picked over skeleton to drift into the deep. Night falls across your desk, and you rearrange your charts again, scratching away at that salvaged manuscript beneath a sputtering haloed lamp, a fluke of resolution. So this afternoon I was out in Worcester at the National Baseball Poetry Festival, which is starting today, and I had to tear back into Boston to get into the seat in front of my computer screen. So this is the second year of the National Baseball Festival, and I wrote a piece for the festival, which I'd like to share now. It's called Short Season Single A Ball. The phenomenon where animals in their infancy appear to us as adorable, even baby hippos and possums, perhaps because they haven't yet worked out how to tangle with the world. This held true for the St. Catherine's baby Blue Jays, Toronto farm team and northernmost outpost of the New York Penn League, where a third of the starting nine appeared to shave only on occasion, whose on-field play was frustratingly precocious from the gangly shortstop who could haul down a liner deep in the hole with panache, but then completely forgot to hustle to the cutoff 2 pitches later. To the pitcher just arrived from the Dominican, who threw searing tropical heat and whose awareness of the strike zone was on par with his English. Bundles of limbs and earnestness. They didn't seem to mind sharing a practice field with the high school, or the grueling school bus hours spent on cross-border treks to Oneonta and Williamsport. They had teal-trimmed uniforms and decent meal vouchers and a squinty view down the long, dark tunnel toward the big show. My ex-father-in-law, Bill, was a casual Baby J fan, and I sometimes tagged along for a matinee when we came visiting. I adored Bill, who was all the things my father was not. Self-made, engaging, forever taking genuine delight when my barbarian toddler boys invaded his trim bungalow. He'd lost his own father to consumption at the height of the Depression, stepping up at age 17 to be man of the house to his mother and 4 young sibs, soon shipping out to Labrador lumber camps and the wartime merchant marine to keep the household afloat. In retirement, he sometimes held court at Community Park, rubbing elbows with season ticket holders who'd bought the privilege to bolt down lawn chairs' seat tops onto their designated piece of third baseline bench. I recall those Canadian June afternoons as forever balmy, and we'd plop down on our stretch of bench, pull out our snacks from home, wait for Bill's emphysema to subside, then do that thing that men from different generations often do. Sit close, side by side, making a show of interest in the plays unfolding on the field. All the while fumbling, as awkward as still moist fawns struggling up from their knees to express, without words, just how much we loved each other.
Nice.
That's what baseball's really about.
Mm.
This next one is called Ad Astra, which is Latin for to the stars. Fresh fox scat on the driveway, yet again. Extrusions of purple berry mush strewn through with bitty rodent bones. You'd think he owned the place, and he does indeed, if not on paper, skulking the swale behind the wellhead, resplendent in his rustiness, last rays before dusk. You and I, so different, so difficult, dear reader. This house we're building, words, your moods, the tick of seasons. And there's a lyric trick I often lean into just about now, launching the frame of reference skyward, a stratospheric swoop. So we now gaze down on minuscule floodplains, scattered city glows, pulling away from Earth's dark curve against a fling of stars. But no, this is just shit on the drive, waiting to get run over by the Subaru or dissolve under cold rain. How could a compassionate heart swell to encompass suffering in all its spasms, landslides, tumors, shrapnel, psychoses? I think I'm losing track of you, me, thou. Listen. I'm breathing shallow in the dark of my den, which is a room, not a burrow, under a phosphorescent vault, which is not a constraint for the hunter or the haunted. This next poem is called Fundamentally, and it has an epigraph. Blessed is the church service, makes me nervous. Paul Simon. A broad stained glass rose window perforated the south apse. When clouds outside dispersed, I could count the shafts of emerald, ruby, oceanic blue, those Sunday mornings when the sermon bored me. My heart neither lifted nor hardened by dry Episcopalian wafers. I sang in the choir, robed and surpliced, until my voice broke and God left me to wander. On a Tokyo civic map, one block of kanji is rendered shelter for persons who cannot go home. Something gets refracted in translation. And this next poem it's a prose poem. It's pretty brand spanking new, and it's called Tensile. This morning, I learned something new from the radio. That the tensile strength of silk can stop bullets. So reported an unnamed surgeon 150 years ago, whose office was upstairs from a rowdy Wyoming saloon, who cited the case of a patient with a folded silk handkerchief in his left chest pocket, who got in front of a slug from a Colt 45 and stumbled away with nothing more than a deep bruise over his heart. That the Archduke of Bosnia possessed a silken bulletproof vest, that he rarely wore it, and how different the global maps might look today if he had dressed appropriately for that fateful drive in June 1914.
Mhm.
Our kids, they go out into this harsh world full of passion and evolving principles. That all you can do is crumple your love and stuff it in their pocket as they head out the door. Then sleep fitfully for the rest of your life. That the strength of silk cannot be reproduced synthetically. Only certain moths in their larval stage can arrange the carbon bonds just so. That mulberry leaves are the most mundane raw material. That love breaks down. But sometimes, miraculously, you can weave it back together again. So recently, my wife Anna and I took a trip to Spain, and there's beautiful museums and churches and artwork and everything, and I kind of get ekphrastic for a while. This is one poem from that trip. It's called After the Prado. A day spent wandering galleries, connecting the dots across an array of Western art's greatest hits. And all I can think of now is a patch of triptych by Hieronymus Bosch, not the central scene where Mary receives adorations from the Magi in her youthful serenity, frankincense and golden baubles strewn at her feet. But high in the left panel, far behind the stable where vanishing points converge, the cloaked figure of Joseph, a good man, no larger than a moth, crouched over a smoldering fire, drying baby Jesus's diapers. And this is another Spanish poem. It's called One Bad Boy Plate of Tapas in Granada. And within hours, I was cramping and retching back at the hotel, a splotch on the risk-reward curve of travel dining, barely worth a mention, except the view through the window above the toilet where I am spewing out of both ends sweeps across a valley of tiled rooftops, upward to the austere face of the Alhambra, its butterscotch ramparts sheer and inscrutable under the rising glow of a near full moon. And I will never again have the privilege of purging before such a magnificent panorama. If Duende is a hard-fought spasm of beauty and suffering, then Spaniards are marinating in it, from cathedrals and museum galleries crammed with gilded portraits of doe-eyed virgins bearing Jesus' instruments of torture, scourge, nails, sponge, spear, to the life-size carving of John the Baptist's decapitated head, plopped on a plinth like roadkill, the sculptor clearly intimate with the anatomy of a beheading. Vertebra, windpipe, jugulars, and gristle, all on display in polychromatic perfection. Too much info, I know, but I am the tourista here, just passing through the world like remnants of my dinner, selectively ignorant of this stratified history. Moors and Christians surging back and forth across a stark Iberian peninsula, and let us not forget the expulsion of the Jews. I was once a doe-eyed virgin too, but what do I know of the torture chambers of Torquemada and Franco, that slow societal crawl back towards civility, only to witness a collapse back into Ukrainian trenches, Israeli safe rooms, Gazan displacement camps, frothy spurts of human decency seeping down runnels in the executioner's block. I have never embodied the resistant fury of a flamenco dancer, wrists writhing above her head, stamping out her ritmo on a square of plywood to reverberate across the plaza. When my own queasy stomach abates, I will rejoin throngs of cafe society for the tale of this trip. All the gente gathering at day's end, leaning in over high-top tables in 2s and 3s and 5s, nibbling on peanuts, sipping beer or vermouth, holding one another in attentive gaze, deep in conversation, lovers, groups of grannies, 3-generation families with strollers, flocks of jostling young dudes. No one is zoning with their phones. All are presente to each other, each to each in this moment, on this plaza. Soft Mediterranean air taking its time to breathe down the avenida under the ferrous clatter of vesper bells, calling us not to worship exactly, but to revere our better, vulnerable selves. So I feel I need to do at least one poem from my chapbook, which is a can of pinto beans from Lily Poetry Press, and this is a collection of poems and sort of fragments from my experience working. I was a nurse practitioner for many years, and I volunteered each summer with this group called No Mas Muertes, which is a group providing material and medical support to migrants passing through the over the Mexico-Arizona border through a very dangerous stretch of the Sonoran Desert. I did that for 4 or 5 years prior to COVID. It was a very powerful experience. The desert is very powerful. The militarization is very powerful. The struggle of people to survive is very powerful. This is a poem called Figures. Ancient cave, cup of shade, a scoop in the canyon wall. The entrance littered with flattened cans of Red Bull, tattery t-shirts, a limp knapsack silvering in the sun. You can feel the fatigue of those who rested here. One more toehold on the long clawing journey toward El Norte. If they had raised their eyes to the ceiling, they might have seen 2 ochre stick figures, hand in hand, looking down on them. How many centuries, how many passers-by? Odom people bearing squash and castor beans from Sonoran highlands south to the Gulf of California, returning with dried fish in labyrinthine baskets, succession of steady feet carving paths up and down the Mesoamerican spine. In the cool of the evening, this generation will reshoulder their burdens, head past the sacred mountain on the left, northward toward the bulge of Kit Peak, bristling with crazy gringo devices for watching and listening to the stars. And somewhere up there, a ship named Voyager, inscribed with a man and a woman and its intended path through the planets, slides further on from home. And I'll finish with this is a poem about my parents have a cottage up on the coast of Maine, and I realize it's the one structure that I've had a relationship for my entire life. I was there as an infant. I still go there now. It's called Cove. Wave into wave unrushed beats into the cove, a shuffle of rhythm through the open after nightfall window. There is nothing more primal sounding than the each of these, a surged white noise, a present tense present for as long as unfurling over sand, a turbulence stretching the now that is now, but nothing only else, the hush of hush receding into unfathomable dark and deepening. And I was once a boy in this house by this sea, in this bed with this same now of rhythm, and that was long ago, but now the only same. Thank you.
Oh, Robbie, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. I especially liked talk about the strength of silk. That was amazing. I have been known to raise Cecropia moths, and the silkworm, it's in the silkworm family. And I always wondered, how do they get out of their cocoons if they're so strong? Apparently, they know to engineer a trap door that allows them to get
Really?
out.
That's amazing. Evolution is kind of amazing.
It really is.
I mean, I know you're going to the Galapagos, so you're going to see all kinds of weird bits of it, but no, I love things like that.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to mention that next month, June 7th, our first Friday of the month, we'll have Linda Lemenza and Alexis Ivy. And I'm going to go through the summer, which I haven't done in the past. I usually take the time off, but now that I'm retired, I'm feeling some extra strength. And so I'm going to go right through the summer. Up next, we've got Sarah Dickinson Snyder, who has traveled around the world twice, both for 6-month sabbaticals while teaching English. In 2000, she and her husband Ben homeschooled their children, Abby and David, as they traveled across the deep south to San Francisco, and then off to New Zealand, Australia, Thailand, South Africa, Egypt, Scotland, and Italy. In 2014, Sarah and Ben again took off for 6 months, adding Japan, China, Laos, Rwanda, and returning to both India and South Africa. Notes from a Nomad unveils the power of travel by unearthing empathy so necessary in today's world. These poems pull us into discovering beauty and understanding tragedy by fully seeing the people and places on this earth. Sarah was selected to be part of the Breadloaf Writers Conference and has had poems published in the Comstock Review, Demfingo Press, West Trade Review, the Main Street Rag, Passenger, and other journals, reviews, and book anthologies. Her full-length collection of poetry, The Human Contract, was published by Aldrich Press. Please welcome Sarah.
Thank you so much, Richard. That was really interesting to hear because I was away when Richard asked for a bio, and so he must have gotten that off of a website that I've never heard that bio. So thank you for reading that. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, those of you who are here. You could be doing many other things this evening, so thank you so much for coming here. We are definitely rewarded by hearing your work, Robbie. It is so, I feel like I've been washed over by such beautiful language, and you've taken us to so many different places in your poems, so thank you. And Richard, thank you for your work in continuing this event. It's a very meaningful thing for those of us who started with Barbara and continue in that rippling effect of reading and writing poetry. I'm gonna read a few poems from my newest book called Now These Three Remain, which references the Corinthians line passage about faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love. And so the book is set up in 3 sections, and I'll read a couple from each section. And then I'm going to read some new work that's going into a new manuscript. So you guys are sort of guinea pigs to kind of hear this work together. It's about 2.5, maybe almost 3 years ago. Eve of Adam and Eve decided to come into my world, and so there are a lot of persona poems. I'm not going to read a lot of them, but I'll read about 5 or 6 of them. So I'll start with my collection, my book. To follow undisciplined ink, or having many things to carry. Think of all the things to save. Those sheets of cardboard, sheets of shirt cardboard, the rabbits I say aloud to no one on the first day of every month, the embroidered fabric I found in the night market of Chiang Mai, pens with thin nibs, what my mind finds, like a planet devoted to spinning, that miniature metal sculpture of a woman riding a bicycle, the back flap of her dress curled from imagined wind in Vietnam, pockets of letters, the tile from Istanbul, symmetrical and filled with hues of blue, like my daughter's eyes and her voice in the dark at 4 years old. I don't want to die alone. And the fact that each kernel of corn is attached to a thread of silk under the husk. Maybe the end will be like diving into a channel with a shore on the other side that we don't know is reachable. Maybe we'll carry what we've saved as we fall into water or become water falling, or at least feel touched by its weight, its glistening, that last breath unribbed. Besides Eve, I also love Penelope, and this is a poem called Entering the Odyssey. I like thinking about Penelope, watching her weave and unweave, maybe see Athena slip into her room, hover over the bed built into a tree, ease her into dream. See the stone ledge of her window, lined with a white-tipped feather, milky curves of shells and small bones, like something on our kitchen sill, a wishbone among the dust and keys and curled rubber bands, the furcula, what a bird needs to pull its wings up and down. My mother dried it in the sun, the arched V reminding me of the skeletal remains of a tiny angel's cast-off wings, where it awaited the breaking and wish-granting, the weight of waiting, of anticipating who gets the larger part. My small index finger being brave, willing to have a wish unmet. So much vanishes, too much to count. Who has more cherry pits in the bottom of her bowl? Who gets the paper ring of a grandfather's cigar? Who holds her breath the longest in that underworld of water? Will we ever get what we want? Maybe all hope is an old beggar. Traveling, and this has an epigraph by Lucille Clifton. And may you in your innocence sail through this to that. Prepare for landing and finally breathe. So frightened I am in the sky, that long, long arrow of fear above the clouds, the mercy of new words for life and death, from this to that, this spinning, dizzy earth. Luang Prabang is no longer a dot on a map when I arrive in the heat on the muddy banks of the Mekong. I kneel and bow. My hands lift with rice and fruit for the monks. I see the hems of orange folds and hear the papery skin of their feet on the narrow street. I sit in a jeep so close to 7 lions eating the belly of a giraffe, their open mouths bloody caves. The South African guide in front, his gun glinting on the dashboard. The quilt of rice paddies I bicycle along, and the Vietnamese bus driver who picks a white flower on the roadside to slip behind my ear. In Rwanda, the smell of red dirt, dried fish, battered metal, and the strange architecture of forgiveness. All this. This afternoon, I trapped a buzzing fly between the window and screen. I woke that night, moved down the dark stairs, lifted the window. Know that what is done can sometimes be undone. This poem is in the love section of my collection. Giving thanks. This morning I woke in gratitude, actually said aloud, "Thank you, Ambien, Mom, Dad, and God, just in case." My husband already stretching and exercising after checking for limp-tailed prostrate mounds of fur in the traps he'd set the night before, and takes them to a place I can only imagine, a sad scatter of tiny skeletons. I will let a mouse scurry on the floors and in the drawers long before I'll pick up that small quietness and wing it into woods. Not all death I avoid. As a hospice volunteer, I have felt the last beat of more than one heart, touched stilled skin that lacquers as it leaves, believe that death and birth share a world. I should thank him first, before the relief of sleep, before my dead parents, before a deity I do not know. He is the person who saved a different me, more swelled with need, not exactly like the helicopter that lifted the lobsterman from Montauk after hours of treading dark water with only a small buoy, but like that. And the last poem I'm going to read in the collection, Now These Three Remain, is actually the first poem. This is the first poem that Eve sort of came to me. So I'm going to read this and then a few more that are not yet published. I mean, they actually are published, but not in a book yet. When God Listens to Eve. It's hard to be the beginning, the one pulled from a cage of ribs, without the sweet smell of milk or symbiosis of skin. That's probably why he and I began our cleaving, arriving already long-limbed and flat-bellied. The only sanity would be to sleep next to him, to reach and find spaces in our darknesses under the stars, both of us, motherless. I wander on the spongy soil where there's too much to harvest, every tree humming with wind and bird sound, ferns unfurled and generous, and those leafy walls of scent, lilac, jasmine, and their shadows. All the furred and winged animals seem indifferent and ornamental. I count the loud crows without number, follow their spiriting from branch to sky, and when I look beyond the changing moon, barely there in blueness, I am surrounded and uncertain. I need to know the world of same that comes from same. A seed begets a tree its fruit. Every stone stays in a perfect place, except the small, smooth ones I pick up. Maker, the next time you want to make yourself into flesh and blood again, place us in a mother. Let us collapse into her arms and know the watermark of a child's tears from birth.
Mhm.
And as I said, I'm just going to read, just look at the time. Okay. I'll read a few other poems, Eve poems. The only woman on earth speaks of want. And you'll notice some repetitious sort of images that I've used in several of the pieces. The only woman on earth speaks of want. As I walk past the unfurling ferns, past the shaggy fabric of willows, past the constellation of crows dotting the meadow, past the unflawed everything in the nothing of sky, I wonder if I could have just a bite, a taste of its goodness, a tiny bit of the ancient wisdom. I am ripeness, restless and alive. Maker, beware of saying, not this. Isn't it the depth of the world that we want? Think wind, not its sudden roar, but its touch on us beyond the flash of sound. Believe me when I say I understand instructions, but you planted in me a little fist of a heart that wants what it wants. Did you say I cannot fly? Well, now my heart is feathered, and I dream of wings. This is called Eve leaving. How I feel a burning in my fingertips, on my lips, when I think of the fruit, as if I'd been bitten. Will there be fireflies, those blinking stars I could have touched but didn't? Will the lupines bloom where we're headed? How the green leaves waited, and in one wet night, the purple stalks emerged. Was endless a kind of paradise? Or must I admit, I was bored? How I longed for more than lushness and just breath. Maybe that was the sin. A line of regal a line of regal turkeys crosses the meadow, and there a doe, her young fawn and its tinny cry a rippling in the long grasses. Are you ready? He asks. I nod and stand. I take nothing except 3 apple seeds in my palm. The known consequence of living. I don't have a list of pallbearers in some drawer. I have no desire for a certain casket or tombstone. I won't go happily, but I know I will go. When God said, don't eat the apple, and Eve did, there were a lot of consequences: snake hatred, pain from childbirth, banishment, and death. Unlike in the garden, those sturdy lupine and ridiculously yellow daffodils, they keep coming back. I might bargain at the end, try to lift the label of what is forbidden, give my silent wishes heft, the way that sweet 10-year-old boy in the front row could not silence himself as the actor playing Romeo raised the fake knife to plunge in his heart. She's not really dead, he blurted out, his little voice like lightning. Don't we want longer stories? How my son and daughter will pour my ashes in the pond, watch a cloud expanding into some unholy ghost before erasure or rising. Beyond Eden. Did they miss her voice? The way she used to thank the peonies for their strong heads, talk to the wind, sing to the meadow, hers different from the chirps of swallows or the owl's night echo. Had there been a boat there, or did she just float on calm water and wonder at the clouds lying beside her? What if she had stayed with that horizon, the colorful fish fins sculling beneath her? All that she would never have seen, the way a swath of snow smooths every edge, the outline of mountains she can climb, the sweetness of fall, the dying season, the one she is now a part of. Why is it her favorite? Maybe the apples, their scent pulling her, in obedience to another gravity. Wooden crates piled high with Maycoon, Cortland, Honeycrisp, Empire. A half peck, please, she says to a red-cheeked woman who palms the bottom of the bag, placing apples tenderly and saying, "You can fit more in this way." Eve sues Apple for trademark infringement. She's stronger now, not hiding or exiled at the polished table in the quiet courtroom. She wears a dark green suit. She knows about archetypes. Hell, she created them. Think fig leaves. Think the Starbucks siren. Think just bucks. She's here to win. That bitten apple has been hers for millennia. She's a little bitter. Her name only mentioned 4 times in that oh so holy book. And yet look at her acreage in the land of blame. She was here with her apple long before you, Mr. Jobs, before the dinosaurs and the forming of your new world, before the unlatched gate and the exile, with apple seeds hidden in her palm. She owns the apple. That's her bite. Should we talk about prior use? Have you seen the Rubens painting? Let's not confuse your insatiable desire with hers. Feel free to take the snake. And then this last poem just references Eve, but it's got Eve throughout it too. Circling. Some spend a lifetime burying a shadow life, swimming laps in the dark, rarely talk about what is always there in the cold pockets of water just on the edge of light. Something comes, even to the abandoned, that last slanted brightness and the long, precise shadows sealing us to where we are, here, broken, yes, filled with vertigo for all we don't know. Why are we here and what happens when we die, whistling through our chambered bodies? No mathematics we can memorize, no peace to find and slip into place, a tumult of unknowing. I hear the unheard as if my dead mother has taken up residence in my head, along with my lost father, the grandmother whose fragrance was a perfume I've never found. All of them finding a way in. They don't know about boundaries, don't know how to leave the living alone. We have our own home to straighten, spines to line on the shelves, a world to fix and cool, unspool the wave of hatred. So much work to do. I relax my heavy head and hard-working neck in downward dog, feel the vertebrae under my skin release, making space inside myself to rename the wind. Imagine my smooth skull, like the Halloween mask I wore once, the elastic strapped tight against my hair, sweaty inside, or that jangle of bones hanging in the back of a high school science room, a bulbous head tilting, the sunken sockets empty. The half moons below my eyes, painted with living and not sleeping. My mother saying from her hospital bed, "You look like you have 2 black eyes. Only a few weeks left to live in this world together," and she finds a way. The cool grass feels almost wet against my skin. A summer night, breathing stars. Tell me a story of fragility and how what is given a trellis will climb toward sky. How time swells and surges, spins willy-nilly in that arsenal of love. Remember the boyfriend who came without a wish, his hand extended with a pint of blueberries like frankincense or myrrh. More myth, really. I recite the words that live inside, the way I did as a child, what to do in case of fire, or press my palm against my thin chest and spout out the Pledge of Allegiance. Or after seeing Jaws, the way my eyes scanned every glisten in endless water, looking for a fin. And those first few weeks of being a mother, when I stopped laughing, everything too serious and important in the atmosphere on the new planet of keeping someone alive. I like that Eve began with bone, harder than clay, closer to everlasting. I remember the bits and powder against my fingertips, as I sifted my mother's ashes into the pond, a murmuration of her in the water, billowing before settling. Thank you.
Hmm. Wow, that was fantastic. Love those Eve poems. There's
Thank
so
you.
much rich soil there,
Thank you.
play as it might be. I mean, she was only trying to increase her education, you know.
What's it all
and,
about?
we're all trying to get back to the garden one
Exactly.
way or another, you know. So it's very, very potent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
It was
much.
really fun to be able to hear or them in my own mind too, getting them together. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. And now let's hear from the rest of the room. We're going to start out with Steve Riel.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. My younger brother David died of AIDS when he was 28. This poem is called There Was a Crash. Cleaning woman drops our portrait, cracks glass decades after shutter snap. Back then, wren-boned, I posed beside your newly hunky torso, flexed beneath tuxedo, your radiant blonde wave from a bottle a brother knows. That sunshot noon we squared shoulders and sang, geez, basking ushers at our sisters' first no guarantees I do. How could we guess what would crash? One of my few framed photos of you still intact, despite this fracture arcing between our bow ties, scarring your just shaved cheek. How can I blame diligent Anna's endust fingers when I too could have held tighter, even if unable to sustain T cells patrolling your bloodstream on this breath-fogged side of the glass?
Mhm.
Mm. Wow. Thank you, Steve.
That was
And now-
beautiful.
Yeah. And now Carla Schwartz.
Thank you so much, Richard. And of course, Robbie and Sarah, and now Stephen. That was all beautiful to hear. And I will, this is a pretty short poem, and it's written in response to a poem of Stanley Kunitz called Touch Me. It sort of takes place right after that poem, and it's called Let Me Touch You.
Mm.
Somewhat of a persona poem. Let the rabbit tend summer's last flowers, my long-lived husband, my pliant muscle. Let me touch you. Let me remind you who you are. Let us curl in bed, each with a book in hand, wait out the torrent storm. Let the raging winds batter our home. We'll rattle, yes, but lie entwined in hush. Yes, I'll remind you, my project poet, of your fenced lyrics, your well-lit free verse, your sturdy elegies. We've patched the mice out of our house many a time, stuffed steel wool up the shower drain at night. Now this creaky home, like us, shows its age. Tomorrow, we'll walk out in steamy air. Take my hand, my heart. It's not too late for love. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. And now please welcome Margot Wizansky.
Hi, everyone. That was, excuse me, that was beautiful work, Robbie and Sarah, really beautiful. Please, Jack Benny. I hope you all, or many of you remember who he was.
Sure.
Please, Jack Benny. My dad, who'd had his first heart attack at 32, loved your wit, your insistence you were always 39, never a day older. Dad looked a little like you, dressed formal, suit and tie, breast pocket handkerchief folded, 2 points showing. Safe inside our 1952 Studebaker, the four of us hurtling home from Philly, 50 miles an hour after a day with Nana, listening to Jack Benny on the radio. Lines we knew by heart and said in unison. Train leaving on track 5 for Anaheim, Azusa, and Cucamonga. We depended on you, your running gags, the predictables who visited you, Mel Blanc, Phil Harris, Dennis Day, your scratchy violin, your legendary stinginess, your vanity, the put downs you put up with. The joke was on you always. And on TV, you stopped time, waited through an excruciating pause, your arms folded, your hand to your cheek, looking around for an answer. Please, Jack, take Dad into one of your pauses. Hold him there. Don't let go.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Margot. Up next, David Miller.
Actually, yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, Margot, I didn't ever see Jack Benny regularly. I think that was a little before me, but I would see him in reruns on television and what? It's pauses, my lord. Having said that, I've been a little concerned that this poem requires, I mean, I'm serious about this, requires a content advisory, but I haven't known how to write it, so I didn't write one. But it's short in any case. It's only, what, 24 lines. It's brand new too. Why this page is blank. Because boiled weeds with feed that donkeys will not eat aren't allowed to mean starvation if someone's throat is open. Because children who play dead next to their bleeding classmates don't get complex grown-up stuff and can't out-talk the pundits. Because just stop killing us doesn't lock thumbs up like put your hands on 10 and 2, because both sides. Because my college theater friend who worked 3 part-time jobs to buy bare bones health insurance died in bed at 37. Because let us reason together. Because civil discourse and let he who is without sin. Because the truth lies somewhere between lunar sex slave colonies and knowing who's the boss. Because I despair of writing words that aren't already dust.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. And now, Kathy Whitham.
I'm unmuted. Hi, everyone. Just ditto to everything that everyone has said about being able to partake of the nourishment of such a wonderful reading tonight. So this is a relatively new poem. I think it's from the end of last year. For some reason, it struck me as I was looking through my poems for a theme, a submission with the theme of impermanence. And this one, I was like, okay, let me try this. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it like that, but here it is. As Monday cannot feel Tuesday. The summer light last evening cross-faded into the light through the wooden side rails of my childhood. It reminded me of the hidden truths I carry with the infinity of a mirror held to a mirror. How the scent of hostas and quiet, like a soft ocean breeze skimming along the sand, can rupture like the unexpected betrayal of a burst appendix. As Monday cannot feel Tuesday, Tuesday not yet woven from the summer light last evening.
Wow. Yes. And next, Rex Arrasmith. I'm having oh, here we go. Yes, there you go, Rex.
I'm here, but I'm in a hotel in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So the lighting is really bad. I'm here doing the National Baseball Poetry Festival.
Nice.
I'm not going to do a baseball poem. Also, it's really funny. When I first moved to Los Angeles, my father-in-law used to take me to lunch at the Hillcrest Country Club. So I used to see George Burns all the time having lunch with Jack Benny. And it was, if I was lucky enough to get a table next to them, it was just always hilarious because they would sit there all day long playing pinochle. And just the banter to hear them talk to each other was always just enlightening. I also, I write fiction too. And before I start a story that I'm going to write, I try to write poems to explore the characters that I'm going to write about. And so this is one of those character poems. It's called Tracker Talks to the Dead. Not literally, at least I don't think so. But when I first met Tracker, we were both sophomores in different high schools. We felt like we were soulmates. Destiny brought two outcasts, two poetry-obsessed, closeted teenagers into orbit. Tracker's mother had died the previous Tucson summer. He witnessed her death. He watched her crash through her car's windshield. She'd been idling outside the barber shop to pick up Tracker, rear-ended by a drunk, and landed right in front of Tracker. He'd held her freshly manicured hand on the filthy pavement until the ambulance arrived to take her away. I don't think Tracker had many friends, and maybe we were becoming a little more than just friends. At least I'd hope so. One afternoon in the library, he just started talking about his dreams. In his dream, Tracker was talking to his mother, who didn't know she was dead. I mean, he thought he was actually talking to his mother. It seems so real, he spoke. She told him to go find her bracelet. She thought she'd left it in a side compartment of her dad's truck, or maybe it fell under the floor mat. He got up at 2 a.m. to look, and there it was, under the mat. He left it on the kitchen table for his father to find. Tracker's dad was not impressed by Tracker's dreams, in spite of all the evidence he presents. Tracker tells his dad all the things his mother tells him in his dreams, things that only she would know about him, like how they met, or what her father thought about him, how he got drunk on their wedding night and passed out, Tracker's dad got furious. Tracker's dad thinks his son is possessed and sends him for counseling, religious counseling. I never knew Tracker's mom, but he tells her all about me. He tells me she always says to say hello when we meet up at the library.
Wow, great. Thank you. Thank you, Rex.
Sure.
Our penultimate poet, Cynthia Bargar.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, everybody, especially Sarah and Robbie, for a beautiful reading. I'm just going to read a new poem, short new poem called Unearthed. When mass graves heave and snake bellies slide, what to make of the paper of record, mess of words, perfect prose, leaked list with forbidden terms, genocide, ethnic cleansing, refugee camps, occupied territory, bluish, balmy ash of nights, so hefty runs the dark, slow walk, trifle of rescues and rocks, all we could never fathom spirals. When there is nothing and finally no one, a presence sighs, infiltrates, fills time. Thank you.
Fabulous. Wow. I will end things up with a poem called Earth Song. I am the hush when the crickets hesitate, the warmth that knows how to behave without starting a fire, a song that knows me better than sheet music, more instinctive than ink. Nothing on earth changes so completely as each night, a new robe each time. Only time matters, and sleep in woods far from home, alive to a heavy brand of youthfulness. I am a bird that keeps itself hidden, but sings, the one who meets his soulmate only to lose her to her soulmate, and so on. When I come to a fork in the road, I weep. The moon lingers only so long, a temporary remedy. Sorrow, said Emerson, after his son died, makes children of us all. I am the albatross, never touching land for years, sleeping on the upturned sheets of wind. No one with more wings than me. And now let's give a round of applause to everyone tonight. And Sarah and Robbie, if you wouldn't mind letting us know how we can get a hold of your books. Maybe put something in the link or just say where we can get them.
Sure, I'll put in a link.
I'll try and quickly put in a link too. But Lily Poetry review books and Amazon. You can see my book and my other books on Amazon.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Mine are also available at, oh, here we go. I'll just get a link.
Any comments, thoughts, observations?
I'd like to say how grateful I am. Thank you. This was lovely. It was illuminating.
Thank you so much for coming, Judith.
Pleasure. More than that.
Yeah, thank you all the open mic readers. I'm just always impressed with the range that people bring.
Yeah.
It's really low. It's really nice. It's really great.
I
It's
see.
a testimony. It's a testimony to the community that you've built, Richard.
Thank you. I see Lee Varvin here, who's going to be reading in December. welcome.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Thank you. It's the first time I'm here. I loved it. It's great.
Excellent.
Hi, Lee.
Is that,
Carla.
hi, Carla.
I'm saying hi too. Ruth.
And Richard, have a safe travels tomorrow and have a wonderful trip.
Yeah, bon
Yeah.
voyage.
Thank you very
Yeah, it
much.
sounds like your poem was kind of lifting you up, sending you off for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think, you know, as poets, our canvas grows with each year that passes. You know, it might start out with nuclear family stuff, but it grows to include more and more as we become more accomplished. So I'm looking forward to a little world travel of my own.
Mm-hmm.
Very exciting.
Looking forward to hearing what comes back with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Well, thanks, everyone. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
And also on in August, I will be the feature here with Eileen Cleary,
Oh, wow.
your
That's
publisher. So
Mm.
Yay.
that's August 2nd, first Friday.